It's the Farmer to Farmer podcast, episode 125, and this is your host, Chris Blanchard. Less than 1% of the people farming in Minnesota are Latino, and Eduardo Rivera is one of them. His operation, Sin Fronteras Farm and Food, specializes in producing fresh, healthy food for restaurants, grocery stores, and a 40-member CSA marketed to the Latino community in Minnesota's Twin Cities. Eduardo started farming with his infant daughter on his back on a quarter-acre of rented ground near Stillwater. The farm has grown to 3 acres of production, still on rented ground. We discuss Eduardo's rigorous business planning process and the progress he has made towards his goals as he has financed his farm's growth and development. Eduardo shares the challenges of piecing together infrastructure like greenhouses and cold storage in multiple locations while he works to finance a land purchase. And we dig into the challenges and opportunities that Eduardo has found in marketing his produce, especially with regards to making it available through Latino markets in the Twin Cities. Eduardo also provides lots of great details about his cilantro and pepper production, his irrigation system, paying employees, and more. The Farmer to Farmer podcast is made possible with the generous support of Vermont Compost Company, founded by organic crop growing professionals committed to meeting the need for high quality compost and compost-based living soil mixes for certified organic plant production. VermontCompost.com. And by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are versatile, maneuverable in tight spaces, and lightweight for less compaction, easy to maintain and repair on the farm. Gear-driven and built to last for decades of dependable service, bcsamerica.com. And by you, our listeners. Your love and support matter tremendously, and I appreciate so much all of the reviews on iTunes, the comments on Facebook, and so much more. I've also set up an option to directly support the show with a monthly donation at farmertofarmerpodcast.com/donate. Eduardo Rivera, welcome to the Farmer to Farmer podcast.
Thanks for the invitation, Chris. I feel really honored to be on your podcast. Thank you.
I'm so pleased that you could join us today. I know that the sun has finally come out here in the upper Midwest after a really wet spring. So thank you so much for making the time.
Yeah, no problem. This is exciting. So I had to make a little bit of time for this.
So Eduardo, I'd like to start off by having you give us a little bit of background with Sin Fronteras Farm and Food. Where are you guys located? How many acres are you farming? And how are you selling your produce?
So Sin Fronteras Farm and Food started in 2014. And I started on about a half an acre that year. And this is my fourth year in production. And I am currently farming 3.5 acres. At least 3.5 acres, but I farm 3 acres, and I market to the Twin Cities, St. Paul, mostly Minneapolis, through various restaurants and natural food stores like co-ops. And then I also I am doing a marketing of a CSA kind of directed to the Latino community in the Twin Cities. Since a lot of the stuff that I grow is in my diet, me being from Mexico, I grow a lot of the things in the diet. So I try to have that option for people of color in the Twin Cities.
And you're located just west of Stillwater, right? Which is east of the Twin Cities.
West of Stillwater, Minnesota, and about 15 minutes from the border of Wisconsin. And the Twin Cities are about 25 minutes away from the land that I lease.
So you brought up the subject of the CSA, and I know that's something that your farm's actually gotten a lot of attention about, is this effort to reach into a community that I think it would be fair to say is traditionally underserved in the CSA marketplace. How has that gone for you?
It's going pretty well. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's something that I'm still trying to work on. I'm not saying that I have 100% of my customers are Latino, but it's something that I'm still working towards to having be mostly Latino families, but it's going really well. I mean, I started with 6 people my first year, which then I did a combination of CSA, the 6 people, farmers market, which is a lot of work, and then wholesale. And so that was my second year in production. I did that. And then now going into my 4th year of production, I have close to 40 members, and no longer doing farmers market because It's just, it takes a lot of labor not to take a certain amount of produce to not sell that much produce and just sit there, and it takes a lot of time.
And then the restaurant and natural food stores market in the Twin Cities, I know is a booming marketplace. I mean, that's where I used to do most of my selling of produce when I was farming. And are you focusing on ethnic foods for that marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, when I started farming, I quickly realized that I didn't want to farm any bok choy, any Asian greens, or any, just things that I wasn't eating. I quickly realized that I wanted to grow things that were common to me, that I could cook all the time, or that I knew how to use them, and that way I would be able to market that stuff. And so that kind of worked out really well. That my number one seller at my farm is jalapeno peppers, or something that I market. Is probably, I would say, a good chunk. I'm not going to guess on how much of the percentage, but I would guess a good chunk. Peppers are a good chunk of my total gross at the end of the year. So I grow lots of hot peppers, lots of tomatillos, lots of cilantro. So I think I tend to market those kinds of things that I remember eating and that I remember my grandfather farming.
Did you grow up on a farm?
Well, I grew up in a small village. We called it a rancho, which is, that's the term for like a really small population of people that live in little secluded areas. But my grandfather was a farmer. He grew black beans and pinto beans, lots of dry beans, and also lots of maíz, lots of corn for masa. And so we all lived in a courtyard where he had about 1.5 acres of stuff that he would grow for the house. And that's where I remember, he had an orchard there where he had, peaches, plums, apricots, quince. I remember having figs. I remember having lemons, limes, grapes. So I don't know how he did it now that I think about it, because he had no tractor. And he had some of that family help him, but he did a lot of space and dry bean and corn, and then still did, enough for the family to eat.
And how did you get from there to being in Minneapolis?
So my father migrated to Arizona in the 80s, and my mother stayed behind us with myself and 3 other siblings. And in 92, my mother decided to migrate and to join my dad up in Arizona. So we migrated there. I spent the majority of my life in Arizona. When I graduated high school, I moved out to Washington State for a couple years, and then I came back, and my wife was currently going to school there in Flagstaff, Arizona. So that's where I met her. But she's originally an indigenous person native to Minnesota. She's Anishinaabe. And so she, meeting her over there, we got married over there. My daughter was born over there in Arizona, but she wanted to be closer to her family. So we ended up moving to Minneapolis, and we've been here for, 7? Yeah, this will be our 7th year.
And how did you get started farming in the Minneapolis area?
Well, it was really her that got me really interested in farming. It was part of, like I said, I kind of grew up having that be a normal thing in where I grew up. And I remember foraging for wild potatoes, foraging for cactus to eat. There's so much foraging happening when I was a kid. I lost track of that when my mother moved us up to the States. And so when I met my wife, she was really into the idea of eating local and organic and healthy. And so part of her friends started a little, and there was a bunch of indigenous people that were doing this in Flagstaff. They were growing corn and squash in the soil that you could literally not grow anything. And so I got really fascinated in seeing how well the combination of the 3 sisters did in that soil, and how some of the techniques that, like the Hopis use, where they dig holes and have water down there, and it lets it out really slow. So there's a lot of techniques, and I got really fascinated by that. And so when we moved up here, we found a community gardening spot. I did a couple of years of community gardening, and then I finally, I think the year after we moved here, I did internship, or not an internship. I can't recall what they call it. Apprenticeship on a 1/4 acre. And that was my first year. I farmed with my daughter on my back sometimes, because I was a stay-at-home dad then. And so I was farming with a 1/4 acre with my daughter, sometimes on my back. And that was my first year. But yeah, it was literally, I think when I met my wife, she got me interested in farming. And so we wanted to buy land, and there was no other way that I could figure out, the jobs that I could get are not going to get me a mortgage on a farm. So the only way to see that dream reachable was to just start a business out of farming and hopefully do it well and be successful and try to buy some land. And, I did my planning I did a 3 separate, 1 5, 1 10, and a 15-year plan. I'm currently approaching the end of my 5-year plan, and I'm thinking I'm on track for being able to apply for a loan, having the history, the numbers that the banks need to apply for a loan for a farm at the end of this year. I'm hoping, and if everything goes well, I'm hoping that I'll start my 5th season at a new spot.
So you're on leased land now.
That's correct.
Did you work with Minnesota Food Association with getting started, or did you just dive in on your own?
No, I dove in on my own. I did a lot. Like I researched them, but it was too expensive. It was like $1,000 for a 1/4 acre. And I lived in the city, and it's like a 45-minute drive. On top of that, you can't camp there. They have all the tools. I don't know how people can make it work, man. It's just, it seems like it's a very difficult thing to make work. And so I just took matters into my own hands. I found this land through some nonprofit organization and got the link to the landowner, and I've been here 4 years. But yeah, I don't, the help that I have been getting is from the Land Stewardship Project, because I've been part of their like Farm Beginnings program, the Farm Dreams. I did that first, then Farm Beginnings. Now I'm in the final one, the Journey Person course. Well, I'll be graduating from that in the winter of 2018.
And so when you started on a 1/4 acre your first year, you must have financed that startup yourself. You came in, you got the tools and just figured it out.
Pretty much. See, what happened was that I landed a job 2 years before I started. I worked at a nonprofit that is also led by indigenous people up here in Hugo, Minnesota. They have a 10-acre farm. Their name is Dream of Wild Health. And what happened was that I was working there. I did a year in the kitchen, working with youth from the farm to the kitchen. We would cook meals. And then the following year, I started farming with them 3 days a week. And that's when I kind of just figured that I wanted to do things or start learning more, because I asked them to see if the following year I could be more of a process of where not the managing process, but just learning how to plan. And I wasn't able to get that opportunity. I think they just needed me as labor, and I was just ready to kind of get rolling on learning more other than labor. I knew that it took labor to get going on a farm. That's what our people do. We work hard, but so I didn't get that opportunity. So I just took it into my hands, rented the land, and I bought seeds. I rented a stall at a farmer's market and went at it. Yeah, financed it myself the first year. The beginning, the first year, it was an acre and a third, but I lost about a half an acre of brassicas to the flea beetle, because I didn't know I was supposed to cover it with row cover because of the flea beetle. So I lost a bunch of crops my first year. And it was a very learning. It was a very much, it still has been. Every year is a learning curve. But
so now, having grown up to 3 acres, tell me a little bit about the tools and equipment that you're using for farming.
Well, I still have some of the same tools that when I started. I guess the first year I didn't have a rototiller, but I have a walk-behind rototiller, a big brush mower that I cut my cover crops with, and it's basically hand. You know, we do a lot of stuff by hand. This year, I'm hoping to buy a little Kubota from the from the landowner that I'm renting land from. He has this really nice little tractor that would suit my farm really well. He gave me the keys already, and I've been practicing on it. So I'm hoping to land that little thing. And if I do, you know, I've been gathering a few things through growing up, like you said. I currently now have a better truck. I have a nice Toyota that gets me around, a Tundra. I've been able to acquire a trailer that I converted into a cooler with a cool bot that I was able to acquire through a grant. I've been able to finance a lot of the stuff that I've been doing through grants. I've been doing a lot of research. I mean, even that alone, it takes work to be able to write the story, edit it, and, you know, to the likings of the boards that pick your stories, you know. And so, but yeah, I have a few things that I'm hoping that'll get me enough, especially after if I get this tractor, I'll be able to move somewhere and be able to start somewhere fresh.
Now, when you talk about financing through grants, what kinds of organizations have you found the grants through?
Well, I've only gone 2 grants in my 4 years. The first grant, I didn't do my grant my first season. Obviously, I did that alone and figured it out. But the second year, a lot of the co-ops here around town have these like small grants for farmers. One of them is called Lakewinds Organic Food Co-op, I believe. It's Lakewinds, that's what I always call it, but I think their name is a little longer. But then, so I did a grant with them my second season, and I got that, and then that's what I did the farm journey person course. I got some money to do the course for that, and then I skipped a season. Or no, the following year again, and this time the grant, I went for a little bigger of a grant, and I did that through the Rick Bayless Foundation, the Fronteras Farmer Foundation out of Chicago.
Right.
And I got that grant, and that grant helped out a lot because with that grant, I was able to buy a lot of landscape fabric that it's the really heavy duty stuff that apparently lasts for 20 years. That's what they were saying. But that helped out my farm a lot with weeding and production. It'd get better yields. That also helped with the cooler. That's what I mean. I think I've been able to, that was 12,000. And then I think another 5 with Lakewind. So, you know, like $17,000 that I didn't put out of my pocket to be able to hopefully get me at, like I said, at the end of that 4th year, a lot of the equipment that I'll need to kind of move on to a space of my own, because I'm kind of ready for it, man. I'm really it's very stressful having your greenhouse in town, having your land 25 minutes out. You know, it's cloudy part of the morning. You don't want to open your greenhouse. You want to keep it nice and warm, but you leave and all of a sudden the clouds break and it's 120 degrees in the greenhouse and you lose all your peppers. Yeah, so I'm kind of ready to have everything in the same spot.
So you're in the process of looking for land right now. How are you going about that land search?
Well, just mostly doing it by myself on evenings after farming that I have time to do research on the computer. Not much of a computer guy. I just use it because I have to. But, I do a lot of the search through the Land Stewardship Project. They have that land access stuff. And then Land Watch, people that know people, I guess. But I haven't been very successful. There was a farm about 2 hours from here that I was really interested in, but it was just too far for what I want to do. I grow a lot of hot peppers, and even going 2 hours north is pretty much it's kind of a difference for a growing season. I feel like if you don't have the right equipment.
Yeah, I think about the difference between Madison, Wisconsin, and heading from here up to the Twin Cities, and I can only imagine what 2 hours north would do to you.
Right.
I'm really curious, and I ask this as a white male, but when we think about farmers here in the Midwest, I don't think most people think about Latinos they think about
Right.
they think about white people farming, because that's, I mean, something like 99% of farmers,
Yeah.
at least that get counted, are, fall into that category. How has your reception been as a person of color, as a farm owner and a farm operator?
Well, I mean, I think the most simplest reason or way I can answer that is that I'm on your show right now. I don't think I would have gotten that opportunity otherwise. I think I stand out because and that was my intention with being a farmer and being out there. Once I decided to kind of just get myself out there, that was the intention of bringing the attention of people to know that the people behind agriculture are actually a lot of people of color, and you don't really see the farmers of color having their own farms or being managers. And I wanted to express that in a way where I can hopefully reach some of my community, some of those farmers that are out there and look at me and say, hey, look at that Mexican dude that came from Zacatecas out of nowhere, had nothing and started with nothing. And I mean, I still have nothing, but I'm 4 years later and I'm, feeling pretty comfortable about where I am. So if I can do it, I feel other people could get inspired and do something similar to what I'm doing.
Have you had negative reception in any quarters?
Well, there's always those trolls when you publish articles and things like that have those negative, well, you better be a citizen if he's farming, or that was like one comment I got, or the other one is that they should build a fence around my farm so that my daughter can't get out. I don't know. Yeah. So I've heard some stuff, it's pretty ridiculous. I tend to focus more on positive feedback from the people that I, grow my food for. Everyone's really receptive to my, going into my fourth season. I still haven't had anything rejected, anything sent back that wasn't good yet. So I take a lot of pride in what I do. And so I don't let those people, those one out of 500 people ruin my day or get me bothered. I just, shove it off, brush it off, and keep moving forward. I try not to get those little distractions get me off my path.
Now, I know just from the background research that I did that it's important to you to be marketing into the communities of color in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And you talked a little bit about the CSA. Are you working with stores and restaurants that? God, sorry, I have a hard time asking these questions because I'm again, I'm the white guy here. I've privilege up the yin yang.
It's okay to feel a little uncomfortable. Saying there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's just part of being human. It's all right.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. So how has it been trying to market to the Latino community in the Twin Cities? What kind of a reception have you had there?
Well, like I said earlier, it's not a process that I would say is totally finished and that I figured out how to market to my community. No, it's not easy. I mean, my produce is not cheap, and unfortunately I'm not a nonprofit and I can't have a sliding scale on my CSA or on my wholesale produce. Unfortunately, labor doesn't work that way. Labor doesn't have a sliding scale. You know what I mean? And so I don't try to take any cuts for anyone. I mean, I feel like everyone needs to pay what our work as farmers is worth, and even that they should be tipping us, because if we're not growing their food, they don't know how to grow it, they ain't going to eat, It should be like servers. We should be getting tips too, but that's besides the point.
It's an important issue when food costs are such an issue, when people are used to being able to get cheap food.
Right. And so that's why it's difficult to market it to the community. I mean, I've tried several stores in the Latino corridor on Lake Street in Minneapolis, try to sell my stuff. My tomatillo is $3.75 a pound. they get their stuff at, I don't know, 10 cents a pound. They sell it at 99 cents a pound. So, you know, when they see my prices, they're like, nah, man, I can't sell your stuff. And so, you know, but I don't think it's like, it may not be that people can't afford to buy my stuff. I think it's just a deeper problem that people don't make enough money to eat well. You know, I think it's a combination of things, but yeah, definitely it's not easy, but I'm definitely trying and I'm not going to give up. That's what my CSA is for, you know, because I was trying to be more of a part of the community and bring in what I love to do. Cause for me, farming is not even a job anymore. It's just what I love to do. And I look forward to doing it as much as possible. And so I'm always going to continue to be here as an option for when people are ready to, you know, make that switch to eating healthy and being okay with paying what it really costs to eat healthy.
Have you done anything different with the CSA to try to reach into an underprivileged marketplace?
You know, nothing, like I work with some organizations in the Twin Cities that we bring youth out. There's my daughter's older school is a nonprofit also. They get a share and they get a share for their youth program. And so, you know, it's slowly starting. It's not something like you said earlier, you said it yourself, you know, it's like, it's the first time, at least that I know of anyone at least in the Twin Cities, like trying to market to a direct ethnic population of people, you know? And so I don't think it's like a one-way street where you're just going to have it figured out right away. There's going to be a lot of things that you're going to run into that, you know, you got to figure out as you go. I mean, for example, my plan for next year is to hopefully do some advertising on the Latino radio stations around town, seeing if I can get more workers or seeing if I can get more people signed up. You know, just trying to get more active on marketing a different way.
You mentioned kind of indirectly competition with nonprofits. And I know of at least one, Minnesota Food Association, that's marketing produce in the Twin Cities up there. Has that been a challenge for you to be, I guess to be identifying in a similar way as being, an immigrant farmer, a Latino farmer, a farmer of color, and to have nonprofit organizations that are also supporting that and marketing and subsidizing to some degree the marketing of that produce?
I mean, I don't think so. I don't really have, any conflict with that. I feel like, I think those programs are out there for a reason. You know, if they work for people, then that's great. Unfortunately for me, I just figured some of those programs were not the way that I wanted to go. And so, but, I'm not saying anything that they don't work or nothing like that. It's just that it might not have worked for me, but it could work for other people. But as far as like the marketing, not necessarily. I mean, to be honest with you, I've been marketing has been really not easy, but like it's been relatively something that I was able to do pretty comfortable. And I think it started, I think it really started because before I knew I was farming, I was already kind of like putting myself in situations where I was going to be farming. For example, I was working at co-ops. I worked at a couple co-ops in town where I was working in the produce departments. And so I got to meet buyers. I made relationships with the co-ops that way. And then, at a different co-op, one of my managers was a chef for one of the restaurants in town. And so through him, I met other chefs. And so the marketing to my wholesale has been really good, and so that's why I have a little bit of flexibility to try to figure out this marketing to try to reach more of a community of color in the Twin Cities.
Did working at the food co-ops and working in the kitchen at Dream of Wild Health, did that help inform your farming practices? Yeah,
I mean, I think it all had a play of what I want to be doing, and at the end, my my goal is not to be farming the rest of my life. I'm hoping to start a farm to table Mexican restaurant. I don't think there's one in the Midwest where they're, having the model is out there, but I don't think there's many Mexican restaurants that are using local fresh ingredients. And so that's my end goal in my 15-year plan, is to be able to have that restaurant, but then, having the farm as well. And yeah, that's kind of like the dream, be able to farm and cook my food, be able to jump back and forth if I need to. I give myself till 50, 55 to work hard. That's at least 50. I feel like I'd be pretty good to about 50, but by 50, I definitely want to have it set up where I can not be farming all the time and be focusing on other things.
I think that's smart. I know that for me, the difference between farming at 25 and farming at even 35, but certainly when I was closing in on 45 was a lot different.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I'm 35 right now. Yeah, I started when I was 4 years ago, so 31. When I started, I gave myself that timeline. I said 50 is the max. So you got to figure out by that time to have you got to figure out before then the retirement plan, but hopefully having that restaurant by the age of 50 and, being able to step away from farming and just kind of stepping into a role of kind of not managing, but just being in the background, making sure things work.
How many employees do you have on the farm?
Let's see. I have 2 people that come part-time 3 days a week. And then I have 1 person that comes full-time with myself full-time. And then I have 3 worker shares that come for a day, once a week. And then they come on like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And so I have people here pretty much. The only day that I don't have help quite enough yet is on Fridays, but I think we'll be getting another person that'll be helping a little bit more, because I'm going to be stepping away to the Stone Barn Center for Food and Agriculture for this fellowship coming up in July. A little worried about it, but I think it'll work out.
Tell me about the Food and Farm Fellowship.
So after I came out on the New York Times video, some of the people from that organization reached out, and I got invited to a conference that they have, the National Young Farmers Conference. And so I went to that, and it was really cool experience. I met a lot of cool people. And so because of that, I got connected to them. And so they're having a fellowship this year with 14, I guess I'm the 15th, 14 other people that are going to be coming together for 3 weeks talking about brainstorming, I guess, about creating an alternative model to the current food system that we have in place right now. So it's a combination of farmers, lawyers, doctors, distributors, produce buyers, a range of people from across the country that will be, like I said, together for 3 weeks brainstorming. It sounds really fun.
And you said that's coming up in August.
Actually, in July.
Ooh, okay. And what are you doing to get ready for that? I mean, because from a management standpoint, stepping away from the farm for 3 weeks is, a couple of days is one thing, 1 week's another, but 3 weeks is a long time to be gone.
Yeah, I thought about that, but I don't know. I feel pretty confident. The 2 of the people that are working with me worked the last 2 years with me, so they know pretty much how I run, how we do the things around here. And so I'm leaving 2 people in charge. One person in charge of the CSA, and then the other person of the wholesale and the deliveries. And so I'll be connected every day with them through my laptop, because so some of the things that I do through the CSA too is that I barter. So I don't sell all my shares. Some of the shares I barter. And so I barter a share with a guy that he writes code. And so he was able to put together a website for me that I'm always like connected to, that I know what the orders are, and people can print out their receipts. It's made my life easy. I can't even describe how much. And so that's in place. And so I feel pretty comfortable being connected with them. They know, when we do the successions of things, I've pretty much have a calendar with everything that needs to go on the ground. When, we have mock-up harvest lists of the CSA, we more or less already know when our peppers are going to come through, because that's what we grow. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've been, trying to put everything in place to make it easy for them to figure, to do what we do on a daily basis without me being here.
That's awesome. Just really putting in the advanced planning work, I think, is a lot of what that's all about.
And the important thing is the website, because my invoicing system is connected to my website. And so people just log on to my website. They have a username, a password. When they log in, it auto populates what they order. The thing that I'll be connecting with my guys here is like what they're thinking of availability. We do everything on 250-foot beds, so we know that we can get 15 cases of cilantro per bed. So there's a lot of things that are already in place to be able to help them send out information to me so that I can update our availability through the website, where they just go in there, like I said, log in, order their stuff, print their invoice. Then that system emails me a list of the harvesting list. And then what I do is I just forward it to my guy to his personal email. He just prints the harvest list for the day, and the gal is in charge for the CSA list, and they get that harvest. So I think I feel pretty comfortable. And, one of the things as a farmer, I don't think you'd be able to function if you don't believe on achieving what you set out to do. You got to have faith, you got to trust, and what's that word? I can't remember a word, but there's a saying for that too. When it comes back to me, I'll remember it.
Okay. All right. Tell me a little bit about operating on rented land as you've scaled up. What are you doing for infrastructure? You mentioned that you've got a cooler that's part of a trailer that you use for deliveries. Do you have an additional packing facility besides that?
No, I wish. There's no infrastructure here. That's why I had to get the CoolBot trailer. The only thing that was here when I got here was water, a well. My first year, I had to water my plants in the middle of July when it was like 90 degrees with 5-gallon buckets. The second year, I was like, screw that. So everything that I made the first year, I put it into my irrigation system. And so, but no, I have no infrastructure. I have no greenhouse. I have no infrastructure, no shed. I mean, I built a shed out of pallets. I think I spent about $100 on other lumber and hardware to put this pallet shed together for all my tools. I bought a big old canvas tarp, the ones that you buy or that are on billboards, and that's what I used for the roof. I covered it with plywood, sealed that, and it was a long extension, so I extended it long enough to fit my walk-behind mower and my brush mower and my tiller. So I literally have like no infrastructure out here, and that's what I was saying to you earlier. I'm just kind of ready to have everything in one place. Tired of the organization where I worked previous years, Dream of Wild House. They'll still allow me to have like maybe one greenhouse table in their greenhouse, and so I have plants in Hugo, Minnesota. I had plants at one of my employees' house in Minneapolis. Plants at my house for like 2 weeks. The greenhouse in St. Paul, plants out here, the cooler that I the CoolBot I just use to store my produce while I'm harvesting. I leave it up here, but my final storage is in St. Paul as well at the Good Acre. So it's everywhere, man. It's a mess, and I don't know how I keep my head on my shoulders.
I think you've got to be a good manager to pull that off.
I try. I think I still have a lot to learn.
Tell me about doing storage at the Good Acre. I know that Good Acres, I've got a little bit of familiarity with it, but I know it's something that most of my listeners wouldn't recognize that name.
So the Good Acre is a big organization that's funded by the Pohlads, I believe, and they're a pretty wealthy family in the Twin Cities. And so they put this facility together. I mean, it's humongous. It's so nice. But they have coolers, they have a kitchen, they have like processing a facility, a washing station. So it's like a hub where a lot of farmers, they also run a CSA with us farmers. So I'm one of their farmers for their CSAs. And so I sell them a lot of hot peppers and other things, radishes and things like that. But yeah, so through them, because it's a kind of a hub, I rent about a pallet size space of cooler at their spot where I do the final, before I do my delivery the night before. So it's a cool organization. I haven't utilized the kitchen as much as I would like. Like I said, that is part of my plan at some point, but maybe stepping away for these 3 weeks, depending on how this works out, I'll figure out how to step away a little bit more to try to, get the other side of things going. But land first. You got to buy land first.
How much do you pay for that pallet's worth of space at what's essentially a food hub there? Right.
That I don't know. I think because other farmers, I don't know. I don't think that can be disclosed.
Fair enough.
I think I have a special relationship with them because I was part of their startup process, and I think, and I also think that they might do a sliding scale. I don't know if they do, but I think depending on where you are on your farming experiences and your infrastructure and things like that, I think that's how they charge. It's not much for me, I tell you that much. It's very affordable. I know that if I was trying to do that somewhere else, it'd be insanely expensive. And so I'm very grateful for being a startup, being a part of the initial startup and having that space accessible to me at the price that I pay is very nice.
And you mentioned that after your first year farming, you plowed all of your capital back into an irrigation system. Can you tell us about the irrigation system there at Sin Fronteras?
Yeah, so I mean the irrigation system is it's a little crazy. I still trying to figure it out, but so the pump, the guy that was here before, or that's his land, his pump is humongous. I think it does 100 gallons a minute. And it's just too big for what we were trying to do. And so what I had to do is I had to buy a separate tank that I could pump the water from the big pump into the tank. And then I bought a smaller pump to pump from the tank out to the field. And so I basically just, you probably know this website, but that website DripWorks,
yeah,
it helps a lot to lay out, how I more or less got ideas from that website, and I kind of figured out to do my stuff in sections that my pump would be able to pump water without having a pressure regulator. So I don't have any pressure regulator. My pump runs, it has enough pressure to reach my fields everywhere right now. Even currently, I opened some new land further away from the pump, and it still does really well. I'm currently setting it up. It's a new area, so I'm waiting for a couple couplings to come in from Knowles to be able to finalize it. But I do a combination of drip and wobblers, so I can run drip and wobblers at the same time. If I have a section where I'm direct seeded, I'll run my wobblers through there, and then on my carrots, I'll put, if they need water. And that's the thing. I have it set up because I learned my lesson about farming and how much you need water. So I put a lot, about half of what I made. I made half of what I made, I put back into the irrigation system. But I what I've been trying to do is with my farming practices is basically farm the way my grandfather did. And he didn't have any kind of fancy irrigation system. And so I try to farm with the rain cycles, you know, and I have the irrigation system as a backup just in case it goes like this weekend. I mean, we went from like swimming in our fields, not being able to get in to plant and do what we got to do, to like now it's been dry and this weekend's going to be like 90 degrees. So now that's why I'm waiting for those couplings, because my plants are definitely going to need water by the end of the weekend. So that's probably how I'm going to be spending my weekend, is watering the fields this weekend.
With that, I'd like to stop here, take a break, get a quick word from a couple of sponsors, and then we'll be right back with Eduardo Rivera from Sin Fronteras Farm and Food, west of Stillwater, Minnesota.
Perennial support for the Farmer to Farmer podcast is provided by Vermont Compost Company, makers of Fort V and Fort Light potting mixes. When you buy potting mix from Vermont Compost Company, you're not just buying an input. You're joining a community of growers across the United States. And like the best inputs and the best communities, you're getting a product and a community that really have your back. Vermont Compost keeps track of who gets every batch of potting soil they create. And because Vermont Compost deals directly with growers without growing through a distributor, they know who's using their potting soils and how they're using them. Vermont Compost knows, like I do, that organic growers are some of the best people on the planet. And they're proud to be a part of that community, just like I am. Taking care of growers by taking care of transplants since 1992. VermontCompost.com. Perennial support is also provided by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are often mistaken for just a rototiller, but it is truly a superior piece of farming equipment. Engineered and built in Italy, where small farms are a way of life, BCS tractors are built to standards of quality and durability expected of real agricultural equipment, the kind of dependability that every farm needs. I've worked with BCS tractors for over 24 years, and I wouldn't consider anything else for my small tractor needs. And I'm not the only fan. More than 1.5 million people in 50 countries have discovered the advantages of owning Europe's most popular two-wheel tractor. And these really are small tractors with the kinds of features found on their four-wheeled cousins and a wide array of equipment. Power harrows, rotary plows, flail mowers, snow throwers, sickle bar mowers, chippers, log splitters, and much, much more. Check out bcsamerica.com to see photos and videos of BCS in action.
And we're back with Eduardo Rivera from Sin Fronteras Farm and Food, west of Stillwater, Minnesota. And Eduardo, we were talking just a little bit about irrigation before we went on break. And, you know, you said earlier that you specialize in some crops like cilantro and hot peppers. And I thought it'd be interesting to kind of dig into some of your production techniques and what you're doing to make those crops work especially well for you. And so can you walk us through what cilantro production looks like at Sin Fronteras?
I mean, it's a very simple, easy process. I mean, we direct seed into our beds early spring. Our beds are 4 feet wide. And so we fit, you know, let's see, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows of cilantro, more or less. I've seeded really thickly, really thick, so that it's like really dense, and you can get a good bunch in about half a foot. You know, you get 2 good bunches out of a foot. Yeah, and then we just try to, you know, we let it go. We leave enough space in between to do the wheel hoe. We run the wheel hoe a few times before, you know, once it comes up, so knock the weeds down. Once it gets going, we let it be so it gets to a nice size. Then once it gets to a nice size, the week before harvest, we do a good weeding by hand to clean out all the weeds that are right next to the row, because everything else the wheel hoe gets. And then, yeah, we try to get about 2 bunches per box. You know, and the way we market is that, I don't know. I mean, I'm not dissing on cilantro from, I guess I am a little bit, but from California. But I mean, when you look at that stuff, it looks horrible. And so I feel like I take enough time to do a really good bunch to where people don't mind paying what we charge. You know, I think I charge about $15 more per normal case of cilantro 30 count. I think you could get it probably anywhere from $25 to $30. Mine's $45, you know. And so I take pride on how we harvest that cilantro, and a lot of the chefs like that they can get a bunch from my farm and literally use it from leaf to stem.
So you talk about doing really nice bunches with the cilantro. What what goes into making a really nice bunch? What's your harvest process and what's your definition of a really nice bunch?
Well, the definition for me of a nice bunch is that you can use a bunch from leaf to the end of the growing tips or the stems. I don't know. I mean, I don't like to leave any growth in the cilantro in the stem, so I brush that out. So I bunch my stem in my hand, but then I grab it a little higher without damaging leaves, and then I brush the stem portions, and all these little clippings fall off. And some of us keep it, some of it just goes back on the ground. But my stems are really clean. There's no growth, small growth, because that's where I found that the problem was with cilantro is that when you bunch it, there's a bunch of growth that's like sometimes weeds and cilantro. That's the small growth, and that's the stuff that tends to go rotten faster. Is the stuff around the rubber bands,
right,
which is the stuff that is all bunched up, and that goes bad fast. And so if you clean all that stuff out, and all you have is stem and the rubber band, then your stems can last in the cooler up to a week. Even longer. I've had my stuff in coolers longer, and I've done comparison where you have where it has a bunch of growth and weeds and stuff in the rubber band, and that stuff starts going black before my bunches do. So it's kind of, we take it a bit extra more time to clean those stems so that there's no growth, and then that way you don't have a problem where you open the box, the first couple bunches are nice, but then you start going further in, and you start noticing all the black around the rubber bands. And that, to me, I think that's why I take that other little time to clean it up really well. So it's just stem and rubber band, and that just keeps it really fresh.
Are you harvesting each patch of cilantro multiple times, or is it just going through the once?
No, we do 2 cuttings per bed. So we cut it. I let it grow to a size where the second growth is still down there, and so we take most of the stem and the first growth, and we chop it, and then that leaves the stems of the first growth. Because I seed it, like I said, I seed it really, really thick. And so there's stuff that germinates, and then there's stuff still germinating when stuff's already germinated. And so the second cutting is that other, like the rest of that seed that gets seeded in there. I do set like I use the earthway seeder, but I use the plate for beets. You know how big that is? I don't know if you're familiar with. So I use that to seed it, but instead of like doing it, I think I cover like every other hole, and that tends to seed it really nice and thick band, and it seeds it also like at a good, so you don't have too many spaces in between where you don't have nothing. Basically, it's like a really good solid band the whole way down. And so, like I said, I do the first cutting, and then probably that second cutting will happen a week later. So if I cut it on a Monday, I'll probably cut that same area the following Monday, and I'll cut a different row, on Thursday. And then that Thursday area will get cut this following week on the following Thursday. So we get 2 cuts.
And then what's your post-harvest handling process?
We put it in, if it's really hot, we put it in cold water in the back of the pickup. We bring buckets with cold water. And then so we harvest it and we put it in there, and we harvest the box at a time. And so once we do that, we bring it into the wash tubs, and our tubs have, some OMRI approved stuff that we use when we use to clean leafy stuff. And so, that's about the process.
Awesome.
We make sure that the buckets are sanitized before we start harvesting, and, that's just something to get me going through the spring. I guess I haven't really like labeled myself as specializing in anything really, because I grow so many things. But some of the people that I work with, this guy that I sell peppers to that makes sausages for one of the stores that I sell produce to, one of the stores has their own meat department, and that guy I've been working with for a while. And so he's like, in town, we have this guy named, his business name is the Tomato King, because he does tomatoes really early. I think they're hydroponic or something like that. And so they're like the first tomatoes that come out in the season, and they're the Tomato Kings. And so I grew a lot of peppers. Yeah, I just like growing spicy, man. My state, I believe, is like the pepper capital of Mexico, where we grow a lot of peppers. And so it was just something that I really loved about, just it kind of reconnected me to being back home. And so growing lots of different peppers, he was like, you're the pepper king, dude. And I was like, no, I'm not. But he's like, you're specializing in peppers. So it just kind of stuck that way. And so, yeah, my number one seller is jalapeno. When I first started, I did a lot of research, though, and it turned out that in Minnesota, the average that were being eaten was the jalapeno, poblano, serrano, which are the most common ones. And so I just started growing those and marketing those. And yeah, those are the ones that I sell, but I also grow some special varieties that you can't get that some of the chefs really like. Some of them are kind of trendy now, like the shishito and the padrones. But I started with those like a few years back, and the chefs really like them. And so I grow some of those special varieties. This year I took a trip to Puerto Rico, and I brought back some seed. I don't know if I should be saying that, but anyways, some peppers from down there called ají dulce. So now I'll be able to put a recipe in my newsletter of how to make a special sauce that they make in Puerto Rico. So, I grow different varieties of those special peppers that people like.
Now, Minnesota is as we've talked, I mean, it's not exactly warm in Minnesota for most of the year. The seasons can be fairly short. How are you actually going about producing those peppers?
So we started in the greenhouse that every year is a hustle to try to find greenhouse space, but we find greenhouse space. We start in the greenhouse. And what I've been doing after I got that grant from the Farmer Foundation from Rick Bayless is that I put them into that landscape fabric, and then I cover them with the slitted plastic, roll plastic. And so that helps them a lot to get going. That gives them a jump. So, I end up planting peppers by the end of the 20th of May, 18th, 16th, somewhere around there. And some of the peppers under that stuff do really well that we have peppers by like the first week in July.
Wow. And you're taking that plastic off once the peppers start to blossom. Is that right?
Well, they're slitted. And it has ventilation, bugs get in, bugs are always pollinating. So they don't come out for a little while they get pollinated in there. Once we start seeing pods, then we start, uncovering it up. But they stay in there. It still cools off at night, and in the morning, that plastic is slitted. So there's a lot of wind ventilation where it's not going to be, like I was saying earlier, I lost pepper. I thought I lost peppers earlier in a couple of weeks ago in that greenhouse. That's what happened to me. I was out in the fields. It was overcasted in the morning, so I left it closed. By like 2:00, it was just like super scorching hot. I freaking excessively sped down to town, trying not to get a ticket or arrested. And once I got there, the temperature reading was 120. When I got there, my serrano plants were all looked dead. I took a picture of it, and 2 weeks later now, I took another picture to put it on Facebook, but they're like back alive. So I don't know, man. Plants are so resilient. I think we as humans are more vulnerable and weaker than plants are. I don't think I could have survived a day at 120 degrees and come back from that, So plants teach me a lot. Plants teach me so much every year, man. Every year I have doubts, about something not working out. And man, these plants are just like, they talk to you. They really do talk to you if you listen, they're just super, super strong. They just know what they're doing, Do
you talk to the plants too?
Time to time, when it's coming to be blossom season, I tend to encourage them to say, like, come on, start spotting out. I need those peppers to be selling.
Now, do you prune off?
But yeah, I do.
Okay, good. Do you prune off early blossoms?
No, I don't.
So just as soon
That's
as you can get them going.
Production. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just let my peppers go. Whenever they're ready, they just start setting peppers, you know. That's a lot. I plant so much peppers that start, like, if I'm going to take time to do that, I think I'd rather take time to do that and go pick up those potato beetles, man. Those are crazy. Peppers are still going to come. That potato takes over, or the potato beetle takes over your field, and you're just screwed.
Yeah. So, are you trellising the peppers?
No, they don't get trellis. They just get planted. We lay out drip irrigation first under the matting. Like I said, it's like my safety plan, just in case. My JIC plan, I call it, just in case. So I lay out the drip, and then I lay out my fabric. And if it's brand new, you know, I have to be precise on how I lay my drip so I don't burn my holes with a torch as I'm burning the holes for. So we got to be precise, you know. And so we burn holes and we plant straight into that. And they're spaced about a foot apart. They love the little low tunnels, the heat at night. That keeps the warmth at night. They tend to like, you know, 70 to 80 degrees if they can get it all average. But so I don't know. I think that works.
That's awesome. And for harvest, you know, with something like a jalapeno, how do you decide when those are ready to pick?
Basically, see, that's one thing I do. Like when we start having like first little pods, I tend to pick off the one, because plants will pop one off. So I don't pick off the pod, but I do pick off the pepper once the pod comes out, and that encourages more of the blossoms to come out. And so we go through and we pick off the little pods that come out. And then, once they get going, you know, those blossoms get going. Once there's enough on the plants, and, I look for them. You know this probably because you've grown peppers, but before they get to a process, or the process of being ready, they kind of have like this waxy look to them.
Yep.
And then when they get ready to be harvested, they have a shiny coat to them. And so I look for that, and as well as like the feel. When they're not ready, when they're that waxy look to them, you feel them and they're kind of squishy. They kind of feel squishy. But then when you feel them, when they're glossy looking, they tend to be more hard. And so once they get that nice, I squeeze them a little bit and they kind of crunch in your hand a little bit. That's when I know they're ready.
Okay. And how often are you picking the peppers? Are you cycling through once a week, twice a week?
So we're harvesting twice a week. Peppers so twice a week we're harvesting. And, you know, we do we probably average about 200 pounds a week of jalapeno last year, once they got going.
Okay. That's a lot of jalapenos, especially for Minnesota.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Surly, one of the restaurants that I work with, Surly Brewing Company, you know, they pickle a lot of them. And so they go through at least 50 pounds, if not more, a week.
Wow, that's awesome. And how lucky you are to be working with Surly. That's not a bad choice of customer right there.
No, that was like I said, that was a connection from my previous manager. He was a chef at a restaurant, but he knew the chef at Surly, so he got me connected with him. He ends up being from Mexico, the chef from Surly. And so, you know, he liked that I was growing all kinds of peppers and tomatillos. It kind of just went right up his alley too. So those are the kind of connections that I, you know, try to make, is that I try to find the chefs that buy the stuff that I'm already growing. And, you know, once we get that rolling, they ask me, you know, like a chef this year asked me for holy basil. So I'm growing some holy basil for him this year. And, you know, he asked me for some beets. So I'm growing beets, things that I would normally not wholesale. But they got to be able to buy my other stuff first. Otherwise, I can't. You know, I ask for $100 minimum per order you know, twice a week. And I ask, I've kind of been pushing my customers to try to hit about a $10,000 mark with me of my produce that I sell to them a season, because I I think once I get to about 10,000 per customer, I'll be able to pay people $15, have a mortgage, and be able to live okay. I'm not in farming to get rich. I just want to buy land and hopefully have my farm be a destination place with a restaurant. That's about it. It's not too much to ask for or to try to go for.
And to be able to pay people fairly is a big deal.
Yeah, that's important to me, man. I mean, last year I paid $8 an hour just because I didn't have the cash flow to be able to do more. But my last year went pretty well. And so my guys that I started this year, I went up to $10 an hour. It's still not perfect. I don't get paid more than they do. I pay myself the same. I just happen to work more hours than they do because of all the stuff that I do out of the fields as well. But, I pay everybody the same as I get paid. If I go up to $12 an hour for myself, all my crew, depending on who stays, but I feel like $12 an hour, anyone that wants to come out and farm and is willing to learn is worth it, I mean, 15 would be good, but can't do that yet.
And especially for those folks that come back that second year when it really is skilled labor at that point, people that really do know what they're doing.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, those two guys, like I said, came back from 8. I paid them up to 10. The other gal I got this year as well, I started her at 10. So, we posted something on our Facebook wall to try to hire somebody for the month of July that I'm going to be gone. Basically just trying to, like I said, I have things in place to be able to get it done. I just want to leave an extra pair of hands, my hands that would be missing, to help then harvest and, do the various tasks at the farm. But, that's how it goes.
Is your wife involved in the farming operation?
No, she has a full-time job. She's not really a farmer, but I mean, she's involved, she helps me with the newsletter. She helps me. I write the grants, but she's more of the, she's the one that went to school. So she edits them and so she does a lot of stuff for me, but she's not in the fields. I don't know if that would be a good idea. You know what I mean? It's like we already are at home all the time and we'd be working together. We'd probably try to hit each other with some hose or something.
Not allowed to do that.
Right. So better keep it that way better.
Now you've talked several times as we've been going on today about your business planning process and goals and markers that you wanted to make. And an example would be, just now you talked about wanting to get to $10,000 of sales per year per wholesale customer, and that would set you up where you needed to be able to pay a mortgage and to be able to pay people a decent wage. Can you talk to me about how you went about that business planning process?
Yeah, the Land Stewardship Project, excuse me, has a farming program. It's a nonprofit here in Minnesota and Minneapolis, and they have a farming program called the Farm Beginnings. But previous to that program, they have the entry level course called Farm Dreams. So that's kind of where you start to plant your seed if you want to become a farmer or not. You get to see all the crazy things that you have to deal with, and that's where people would get discouraged of maybe farming is not for me. But then they have the Farm Beginnings program, and in that one, they work, their approach is a holistic approach, a holistic management approach. And so through that model, I was just able to kind of figure out exactly, and it's not set in stone yet, but it gave me a track to be able to figure out, to put goals into place, and then on top of that, to do active things to get me to those goals. So that program helped a lot.
And is that something, I assume you have all of that written down? This is an actual document that you were able to refer to over time.
Yeah, there's, like I said, 3 sections to it. The first section was trying to buy land in 5 years. The other section of that is paying off some of the land and doing the same thing that I did with farming, like acquiring things that'll get me to the next point of my next part of the plan.
I think it's really great. I think one of the real values of going through a program like the Farm Beginnings classes are that they give you a foundation and help guide you through doing some of that work that's not always really clear how you go about coming up with a business plan.
I mean, I take a little bit from everything. I mean, I would even say even going to your workshops it helped me a lot at Moses to do some record keeping and trying to be more clean on the desk. Everything helps, you pick up a little bit from everyone that's already done something. And so why not put it into what you do? And it all of a sudden starts evolving into this thing, and keep learning from that.
You mentioned earlier learning to farm from your grandpa. And you talked about, learning especially about water and water conservation. What else do you feel like you've brought to your farm that maybe somebody that grew up in the city here in the United States wouldn't have brought to their farm?
That's a tough one. I don't know. I mean, I think one thing that I can think of is I just remember how my grandfather didn't rely on anything else besides Mother Earth. And I feel like that's one of the things that here, I think we get used to, like being able to go out and just buy any implement for a tractor, or like being able to get drip, or, those kinds of things. And I think that having that approach to being able to like believe in how people used to farm without those kinds of systems that are currently in place. I think that's what I probably bring different to farming. That's the best thing I can think of right now.
With that, Eduardo, I think it's time to turn to our lightning round. We're going to get a word from one more sponsor, and then we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
This lightning round is brought to you by you, the listeners of the Farmer to Farmer podcast. And the nice thing about that is I probably don't need to go on and on and on about it, because the fact you're here probably means that you already think the Farmer to Farmer podcast is kind of cool. If you value the show, please consider heading over to farmertofarmerpodcast.com/donate to have a look at our options for directly supporting the Farmer to Farmer podcast. Your direct support helps make this show available to a wide variety of farmers, farm workers, and farmers-to-be across the country and the globe. I would especially encourage you to check out the option to support the Farmer to Farmer podcast through Patreon, which provides a way to make a monthly contribution to the show. $5 a month comes out to just over $1 a show. And that makes a big difference keeping the tractor running over here. That's farmertofarmerpodcast.com/donate. And thank you.
Eduardo, what's your favorite tool on the farm?
The wheel hoe.
And what kind of wheel hoe do you have?
I have, Oak Valley.
Okay. That Valley Oak. Yeah, that's a nice one.
Valley Oak. Yes.
What's your favorite crop to grow?
Peppers.
That seems like kind of a no-brainer right there.
Yeah.
What's been your favorite resource for learning how to grow these hot weather crops in Minnesota? Where do you turn when you need information?
I don't think I have like a place where I turn for information for hot weather crops, but I do reference, when I first started farming, I based my first year of production based on the John Javins book, Grow Food or Grow More Food. What's it called?
How to Grow More. I think it's something. I'm talking about? Yeah, something like how to grow more vegetables in less than you can imagine in less space than you ever thought possible, or something like that.
That was one of the first books my wife gave me, and from there I planned my first season. And so time to time I tend to reference like spacing, and I feel like it has a lot of information. It's very useful.
Love that. That was actually one of my 3 base books when I started farming at Deep Springs College. So I'm right there with you on that one. What's your farming superpower?
Farming superpower. I don't know. I tend to just make things work. I don't know. I have that, like, I can build things. I don't know how to weld yet, or not an electrician, but anything beyond that, I could pretty much figure out. I feel like I can make things work with very little. I've been able to figure out. I mean, I started with nothing when I first started, no irrigation. Like I mentioned, I watered with 5-gallon buckets my first year. So I just feel like I'm able to figure out when I come to problems, like I find solutions.
That's a great superpower to have. Finally, if you could go back in time and tell your beginning farmer self one thing, what would it be?
Probably get a little bit more experience before just jumping full on. I think that the one thing I would tell myself is, like find your markets first, do all the research first, and then throw your seeds in the ground.
Awesome. Eduardo, thank you so much for being part of the Farmer to Farmer podcast today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to hearing it.
All right. So wrapping things up here, I'll say again that this is episode 125 of the Farmer to Farmer podcast. You can find the notes for the show at farmertofarmerpodcast.com by looking on the episodes page or just searching for Rivera. That's Rivera. The transcript for this episode is brought to you by Earth Tools, offering the most complete selection of walk-behind farming equipment and high-quality garden tools in North America, and by Rock Dust Local, the first company in North America specializing in local sourcing and delivery of the best rock dust and biochar for organic farming. Additional funding for transcripts is provided by North Central SARE, providing grants and education to advance innovations in sustainable agriculture. You can get the show notes for every Farmer to Farmer podcast in your inbox by signing up for my email newsletter at farmertofarmerpodcast.com. Also, please head on over to iTunes and leave us a review if you enjoy the show. Talk to us in the show notes. Tell your friends on Facebook. We're at Purple Pitchfork on Facebook. And hey, when you talk to our sponsors, please let them know how much you appreciate their support of a resource that you value. You can support the show directly by going to farmertofarmerpodcast.com/donate, like we talked about after the lightning round. I'm working to make the best farming podcast in the world, and you can help. Finally, please let me know who you would like to hear from on the show through the suggestions form at farmertofarmerpodcast.com. Eduardo was on the show today because of recommendations that I received through that form. I'll do my best to get them on the show if you recommend them. Thank you for listening. Be safe out there and keep the tractor running.